This is Talib Jasir, founder and CEO of Afros and Audio, and I want to personally invite you, yes, you, to the 4th annual Afros and Audio Podcast Festival, October 22nd and 23rd at the Warwick Rittenhouse Square Hotel in Philadelphia. Don't miss this 2-day conference for and by Black independent podcast creatives and audio professionals. Visit bit.ly AFAU Fest 22 to learn more.
You have to facilitate joy every day of your life, because the facilitation of joy is like a bank account. If your mental health bank account, every day you're facilitating joy in some way, you are not depleted and working from a deficit when life hits. You know, we know as Black men, we walk out the street, we a target. That's Trump, right? So we got to store up our joy like a good credit rating.
So we, over the course of our show, have really talked about Black men and health a lot. Because it's really important, man. Like, and I'm happy that we get an opportunity to do that every chance that we do.
Absolutely. Black men are one of my favorite people is Black men. The other is Black women. Yeah. But yes, absolutely. And being that we are Black men, it comes as no surprise that we are in tune to the needs and the things that Black people are going through. And each and every episode, like we strive to do on Q Points, is that we find the humanity in everything we discuss, even though we're discussing music. That's our larger platform, is we like talking about Black music. But you can't talk about Black music without talking about the people behind the music. And a lot of artists, a lot of us are struggling. They've been struggling throughout the generations, and we heard it in the music, but we took it as, as joy, because it was presented to us as joy, something to enjoy. But there's a lot of pain that a lot of us are going through. And it's about time. What I love about this time that we're living in is the young people, and we give them a lot of grief.
We do.
The younger people, we do. But the young people are not afraid to speak up and say, hey, I don't like that. I need to take a moment to be by myself. I need to take time off. I'm quitting this job. I'm doing whatever it takes to protect my mental health. And my hat's off to them for advocating for that and championing that as their, main thing for their generation. And we are lucky today to be talking to two brothers who happen to be from our generation, speaking on the same thing.
Yeah, man. Like, so before we bring our guests on, I want to just kind of lift up the beautiful organic nature of the way things work. So, I met Dr. Ed Garnes, I think, oh my goodness, back in like 2014, 2015. And, of course, Kipper, I've, been Kipper's manager since 2014, and we ended up over at ABL Radio. Shout out to ABL Radio. Wow. I really miss ABL Radio. And yes, got the opportunity to meet this brother, and one of the things I will never forget is just the energy of that moment of being there to participate in the show and just kind of sit and watch, but watch also Ed's journey, right? So I was really excited when I saw that Dr. Garnes and Moetown Lee were starting a new podcast called Reclamation Point, and that Ed was like, hey, we should get on the phone. And we got on the phone, and here we are. So everyone, we are so excited. You know how we love bringing other podcasters on to talk about their shows. It's a thing. And so we are so excited because now we are going to bring on Dr. Ed Garnes and Moetown Lee of the Reclamation Point podcast.
Welcome to the show, brothers. How is everybody feeling today?
Hey, man, we feel amazing.
I feel good. I've already had my sweet tea intake, so I'm good.
Now, wait a minute. Was this with Domino sugar?
I don't know if it was Domino's, but it was loaded to the point of almost a diabetic coma, like we have to
Okay.
have it in the South. So it was good.
Okay.
We're gonna
Bad
get
for.
him some stevia or something.
Right.
We gotta get this
Well,
brother together over there.
absolutely. Well, I'm so pleased, just like J. Ray said, I'm so pleased to have both of you on the show today. I had the opportunity and the pleasure to catch the very first episode of the Reclamation Point Black Men and Mental Health podcast. And I got to say, I was immediately drawn in by the the two of you's relationship, because it's not just, we're not just co-hosts, you guys are legit friends.
Yeah.
And the conversation, it took a lot, the conversation took a lot of vulnerability. You were very, like, from the gate, you all opened up. And Dr. Ed, you showed, I know because of your profession, but you showed a very heightened level of curiosity and observation. And of course, Moetown, you were willing and able to open up to him. And I get that that's what the show is about, but I do know that it's going to take a lot of unlearning for Black men specifically to be able to do what the two of you did, because that's how the healing is going to start. So what can, aside from watching the Reclamation Point, what can we, Black men, Black people, period, do to start that unlearning, especially with little boys, but just start that unlearning so we could begin to start healing?
Well, for me, the podcast and the conversation is actually a real conversation. Like, so we have, even though it's playing out to everyone else, this is actually a real conversation that I'm having with my friend who actually happens to be a therapist, right? It's not me like going and having a conversation with it, because I think if that's the way it was presented, me going and laying out everything through a therapist, I wouldn't. And I didn't talk with my friend first to be like even open, because there's a lot of, like, for me, just like a lot of Black men, therapy has been suggested on many, like, a lot of different times, and I've never been open to it. It was just like, for what? And the reason, and I always thought it was a motive for people to suggest therapy to me. Right? It would be like, if I'm in a relationship and I'm dating somebody and they're like, you need to go to therapy and figure it out. And I'm like, all right, you want me to go to therapy because you think that I'm just bad and you're just this perfect person. And this therapy is going to tell me that and it's going to help me. That's how I took it. I wasn't receptive to it. It wasn't until I got to a place where I'm like, normally I'm able to shake off these certain feelings and whatever, and I couldn't shake it. And I'm like, all right, what can I do? All right, let me call my friend who happened to be reaching out to me like a lot. You know what I'm saying? He knew I was like going through something, and he reaching out, and I was avoiding him. And I was like, all right, I need to call Ed back, and I respect Ed. We already have these personal conversations about what we're going through in life and just in general anyway. And then him talking to me and me like just having this relationship with him made me receptive to it, and me being receptive, and I was like, all right. And then talking to other brothers, like my other friends, who I'm like, oh, I didn't know you go to therapy. Like, oh, really? And they're like, yeah. And so this is what made me be receptive to it. And then since it helped me, I'm like, Ed, we need to have this like, we need to expose other brothers like to these conversations so they can look at, I looked at it, they look at me like, I was super anti-therapy. So if he can actually go and it's helping him be a better person, maybe we can help with other people.
Yeah. It's funny, there's not a magic secret. It's so simple that it's revolutionary. Black men are always looking for a safe emotional place to land. And we've been taught by Western world culture and white folks to see vulnerability and emotional expression as a weakness, but in Black psychology, it's actually a psychological strength to bear your soul. The healing comes for the bearing of the soul. And DJ Sir Daniel is working on a master's in counseling because he picked up on something that is very important. Absent a deep and loving relationship with Moetown as like my big brother and me, his little brother, absent that relationship, you don't get Reclamation podcast, and you don't get the vulnerability that you saw in episode 1, because without a relationship, or as my mentor, Dr. Cornell West, would say, there is no love without correction. And so when you come from a place of love, you can correct, you can redirect, you can reclaim your dignity when you are dealing with individuals that love you on a soul deep level.
Wow.
I
Watch.
told you, he
I know,
on the road.
but we do this all. I love it when I get a chance to do this with. I swear, Ed, every time.
Every time me and Jay Ray talk, it's like a family reunion and fish fry all in one.
Yep.
The first episode really did illuminate something for me that I had not thought about. I feel like I'm pretty well versed in things. I understand what things like depression look like, what things like having challenges. But one of the things that was highlighted at the very beginning in Moetown, you were telling your story about, hey, this big win happened. I wasn't really talking about it. And it got me thinking, and DJ Sir Daniel, you know this about me. I don't typically celebrate the wins. Like, I don't talk about the stuff that's happening, really good things, right? I'll be excited about it, but I'm always planning for the next thing, right? That thing happened, that was good, dope, but I'm on now to the next thing. It got me thinking about like the importance of, as Black men, celebrating ourselves and being okay with that. So I'm just curious to know y'all thoughts on, one, that statement, and two, how do we start breaking those cycles and truly as Black men being okay with saying, no, I did good. And I want to tell people.
That's funny that you say that, because the initial conversation I had with Ed when I was in that place, the thing that he left me with was, hey man, you got to focus on what makes you happy and celebrate those things and gravitate. Because before, like, I, just like you, I'm only as good as the next thing I do. Right. I'm like, you know what? You just broke this record. And this artist went from just backyard to selling 5 million copies. And I'm like, that ain't nothing. It's all about the next. And everyone comes to me like, what music fest and this big thing. Y'all went from a parking lot to this. And I'm like, yeah, but we're not the biggest Coachella, right? You know what I'm saying? We'll figure it out. And I didn't realize, Ed made me realize that was one of those things that mentally like holds us back, not celebrating, and making it, because we know those people who sometimes they just you over celebrate. It's just irritating. You know what I mean? Like, I'm this and that. It comes from a place of ego, right? So we're so anti that, that we're just like, And so I was in that place, and I was in that place where I was ashamed of like the wins. You know what I mean? I was when people came to me and literally like, oh, this is dope. And I was like, oh God, why is he like, really? Like, oh, in the inside, I was just like, and I would shy away. But I was that gave me anxiety. So one of those things that Ed, I always, it's probably, we talked about a lot of different things, but that was the first thing the tool he gave me to think about and focus on about being better mentally.
It's funny, y'all, because we are taught by white society that we as Black folks have to earn our joy. Like it's something that we have to do to earn earn our liberation, to earn being respected. So we have been conditioned by a white supremacist culture to not facilitate joy. And then also because I don't know a black person that doesn't work hard. Like every black person I know works hard. All right. So let's get that misnomer out that we don't work hard. Right. So every black person works hard. But what we tend to do with joy and mental health is see it as a celebration after something when it has to be proactive. Right. You have to facilitate joy every day of your life, because the facilitation of joy is like a bank account. If your mental health bank account, every day you're facilitating joy in some way, you are not depleted and working from a deficit when life hits. You know, we know as black men, we walk out the street, we a target. That's Trump. Right? So we got to store up our joy like a good credit rating. And so people think that the sweet tea is just me wanting diabetes. It's not. Here's what you have to think about with the sweet tea. The first thing that my grandmother taught me to cook was chicken wings and sweet tea. So that's actually my mental health armor, and how I cope and deal with things is that it's like her messages come through the sweet tea and the chicken wing. So it's not like I just want to drink this, right? But it's become a healing strategy because I remember my grandmother's sayings, and her sayings was all about resiliency. That's what Southern grandmas give us, right? And so that's what we have to remember, is that joy is a process. Joy is ours to have. Joy is ours for the taking. And also, just humor. Like if you look at social media, black folks gonna laugh. All right. When we was in the pandemic, I mean, a good meme, a good funny video, we gonna laugh. Right? But we don't realize that is a psychological strength, having a gallows sense of humor. People think that I survived academics off of intelligence. Richard Pryor, a state need half of my degree because Richard Pryor got me through. Laughing to keep from crying, facilitating joy are things that we have to make an everyday practice, like a healing suite that we create for ourselves on a daily basis. We don't have to be reactive. We can be proactive and store up some joy.
You know what? Wow. I couldn't think of a better analogy for it, because to both of your points, like when it comes to good things and whatnot, the way I try to approach it is, and I have another question after this, the way I approach it is just making sure that I approach it from a stance of gratitude, and just constantly having the gratitude, and then the gratitude triggers joy. And so Moetown is like, because I approach it from that way, it kind of negates the guilt, because same. I feel it's like people, you get done doing a set and people get their life and they have fun and they come up to you and be like, oh man, you did that. And, I'm like, oh man, that's, thank you. Instead of just that whole, thank you very much. That whole, that it's not fake humble, but it's definitely, it's like, okay, enough of the humility act. It's like, okay, enjoy it. That's why in that moment when I see people, Moetown, we were talking about this earlier about enjoying the craft of DJing. In that moment, when I'm seeing people singing to the top of their lungs and dancing, I have to stop, not think about my next song is queued up, but I'm stop and just take in that moment and enjoy that visual. And it's like, this is why you're doing this. But I want, Dr. Ed, you said something earlier that I picked up on, and it was about being able to correct with love. And you two are venturing off into the podcast landscape. And when we see two black men in a podcast, everybody's like, oh, here we go. Another alpha male podcast, and telling black women what's wrong with them, and telling all the gay people what's wrong with them and why you're not a real man. And you guys have a lot to battle against, because that has been what's been presented, and that's what kind of won, because that was the only thing out there. How are you preparing yourselves to go out there in the battlefield as it pertains to podcasting and cutting through the nonsense and getting your message heard?
Well, they say cream rises to the top, authenticity rises to the top. We have no interest in like being the number one podcast for ego. we are doing this to normalize mental health and freedom for Black men. And so when you have a divine purpose, it kind of takes care, and your space is created for you. You know, because some people would say, oh, crap, like you said, podcasters are inundated with Black men talking toxic. Where do you fit in? It's always a place for brothers that's real and authentic, you know, which is why Q Points has a place, right? Because what you all bring to the table is unique to. But I think what's different, what you're describing, is ego and toxic masculinity and bootleg versions of white masculinity being dominant that you see on these particular podcasts. Because Moetown and I have a deep relationship for each other, it's rooted in respect, and it's rooted in a community orientation that has always guided Black folks that we have forgotten. So it's funny, the clip that Moetown just did for episode 2 is going to really shock people, because it's talking about that particular love factor. And so I think we make space for ourselves because, you know, we are willing to be vulnerable and talk about our mistakes. And to show you episode 2, when it comes out, you're going to see Moetown shocked, because I revealed some things even Moetown didn't know. Because sometimes people see therapists as the all-knowing, and we haven't struggled. And so what makes me a better therapist is that I as a Black man have been through hell and came out on the other side and still go through hell daily. So I have lived in this world for 45 years as a Black man. And so I have experience on the academic side, but I remixed that with my grandmother's Southern sensibility and common sense to create the antidote to a lot of the toxic things that you see. So I think, you know, it's a place for us because there's nobody like us.
Right. And the approach we took is education through experience. It's like our lives, your entertainment. It is not. I think for far too often we talk. For episode 2, when we talk about relationships, we didn't talk about relationships in a place where like the competitive banter, because this is not what we want to do. I talked about my experiences and why I thought. The ways that I thought about certain things, and how therapy and how approaching my mental health has exposed me to learn why I thought these ways. Because we all, like, there's times where we can easily point out and be like, well, all right, I'm from the West Coast and I grew up off Too Short and Sugar Free. Bees ain't ish, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's my mentality. Like, I'm just gonna get over as like whatever. Or growing up, like, I'm just gonna have less. How many did you knock down? How many numbers did you get? Like, right? We got to the root of like the mental aspect of why I personally thought that way and why I approached sex in that manner. And in episode 2, we talk about me actually my first sexual experiences was with like older women. I basically was molested by older women, and through that, sex was never this like love, this amazing thing. It was like a thing of perversion. It was like I was ashamed. So we talked about why I got there. It wasn't it's not to bash women because that thing's happened to me. It was why I personally thought the way I thought and how I thought about how I viewed relationships, and how me getting a better mental understanding of myself is helping me progress and not look at situations like I did.
Yeah, that's the difference right there. You know, I don't think you're gonna find too many podcasts where we open with, you know, the black dirty secret, which is molestation, and sadly, my it was a different situation. But my first sexual experience was with somebody older. They were closer in my age, so you know, technically it wouldn't be molestation, but that's a running theme among black men. And when we were having these conversations, we were surprised. I was surprised, even as a therapist, how many brothers came to the table telling us in these initial conversations that would become Reclamation podcasts that they had been molested, they had been sexually violated, they had been touched in inappropriate ways from teachers, pastors, family members. So, you know, just creating that space to talk about and process through things is important. But Black men have had therapeutic conversations. That's all I did was provide a therapeutic conversation. If all of us go to the barbershop right now, we're spilling our guts. They laid me off, you know what I'm saying? Because Jimmy came late. I was late. We're going to tell our whole story, right? So we've had therapeutic conversations. So we try to make it cool to say that therapy for Black men feels like a cool barbershop conversation or a conversation amongst brothers that you already have. You're just talking to someone a little bit more trained in the mind. And it's important that Black men seek Black therapists because there is a lack of empathy in America for Black men historically that only I feel with Black men, it is important for you to have a Black therapist to get to the root of things, and you don't have to over explain the salience of your identity as a Black man.
Yeah, and for the sisters is watching, like the way we presented this is our Reclamation Point isn't just for the brothers; it's for the sisters to get understanding of the brothers, and not in a way where it's like it's bashing and it be rejected, because a lot of times women like aren't privy to these conversations that we have amongst each other. They'll never understand like, oh, this is how y'all thought, because most of the time men aren't having these vulnerable conversations, and you know what I mean, in the presence of a woman, because they're either looking at either how they would be viewed. You don't want it to come up. You just want to come back up in an argument. You may tell your significant other something, and in an argument it comes back up. You feel like this because this happened, so immediately you shutting down. And so these are things. So a lot of times we don't feel the need to, or feel like safe enough to be vulnerable. And these conversations, and with this, we want to expose them. So want to not only expose ourselves, but have our guests come and expose themselves to the point where we're just having a natural conversation. And we hope that, not only the guests leave with a better understanding of their mental health, Black men and mental health, but when people see it and people hear the podcast, you understand, like, okay.
Yeah, in our early conversations, people were shocked to hear us say, if you identify, out of the confines of heteronormativity, right? So when you say those things, people are like, what? There is no other way to identify. Yes, there is. Right? So, we are all encompassing and understanding that, even though, when we talk about, women and male relationships, we always leave space that everyone identifies differently. And I think that's what draws people to the podcast, because it's a come as you are situation. So we understand that people in relationships identify several ways. And so, we always try to be mindful of that. But that seems to be surprising for people in the early conversations on Instagram. They were like, there is no other way. Yeah. Listen to the podcast. You can identify however you want to, okay? You're still going to have relationship problems.
Listen, thank y'all so much. I want to, big that up, because that's so important. Especially folks seeing two Black men do that, because I think I know that this isn't true, because I'm a Black man who exists and I have all types of Black friends, right? So I know that there's a whole bunch of us that don't do that, but many people don't see that in media spaces. So I want to big that up. So thank y'all, brothers, for that. 2, I am going to get to a question when I get to 3. 2 was so refreshing about your approach. I was in the car with my cousin, who is divorced, and I may have said this to you, Ed, too. She was like in the car, like, I just think, it would be so great with you having conversations with other Black men. And I was like, well, we do Q points. That's not, we bring that part in, but not really like that. But her, as a Black woman, she was like, no, but I just really want to learn more about what Black men think, but not in this negative way that I have been hearing it. Like, I want to hear these real conversations. So I'm so happy that Reclamation Point exists, because I will make sure that she tunes in. Like, y'all are y'all, this is the perfect dynamic for her, because I know that she's been looking for conversations like this to just tune into and kind of lean into as a woman who wants to learn more about Black men and how Black men think, especially as being a Black woman who's divorced, right? So that's 2. 3, here's my question. What's coming up is what I love about the potential of Reclamation Point is the opportunity for us as Black men to, 1, build bridges, and 2, be better friends to each other. Because when you're able to be vulnerable and feel like it's safe to be vulnerable with other brothers, I feel like that is truly a path where we can climb out of all of this stuff that we have been trying to get through forever, since we've been here in particular. As brothers are coming to Reclamation Point, what should they come with? What should brothers who tune into your show, how do you want them to kind of engage in the conversation?
You know, it's like old school. It's like church used to be, or in the come as you are, right? I say just come as you are, because if you come with preconceived notions, you're not going to be able to receive it naturally. So don't come in. You don't have to come in, and listen to Reclamation Point and hear it, and come in like, oh, I'm healed, so I can listen to this. You don't have to be at a point where you feel like I need help, so I need to listen to this. Just tune in and listen to our natural conversations, and see if it's something that it may touch you, or it may touch somebody that you love. For women, it may help you with it may help you with your relationships with your husband, your significant others, or if you have children, if you have black male children, you have a better understanding, and you walk away with like, okay, I understand. I'm able to sit my Black boy down and have a conversation with him. So we don't, I personally don't want anybody to come in any kind of way. It's the way I want you to leave, though. It's the way, so
Yeah,
I want you to leave better than you came.
it's funny. I was gonna say, come on in, just like Moetown. I felt that Vicksburg, Mississippi church next to my grandmother's house. Come as you are, But I will say, for brothers, there's no hierarchy on who is important and who can get whatever we're giving with this particular podcast. Sometimes in Black life, there's a hierarchy. Like, only celebrities can digest Reclamation Point because they have this they have this social influence. No, anybody can come, anybody can join us. It's like a fellowship. We hope that you gain something from it. So no hierarchies exist. If anything, we feel, we as Black men, if you're a Black man or identify as Black, we're all on the same playing field. Because when the police come behind me, they are not checking my degrees. They don't care nothing about these 4 degrees. They see me as a Black man. And so that bonds our realities in ways that, equalizes the playing field for everyone. So, come as you are. And like Moetown said, what we hope you leave with is some tools. This is what depression looks like. This is what anxiety looks like. This is how racism compromises our mental health. We hope you leave with tools, understandings about yourself. And I also have a hope that this leads to more vulnerable conversations. If we could make emotional vulnerability and emotional vitality cool for Black men, that would be my undercover wish for this episode, is that people start having better conversations. They start confronting things that have troubled them. And one of the goals is to see brothers seek therapy if they feel comfortable to do so.
And you know what? I love that for us. I love that we have that this is happening. The Reclamation Point podcast is happening. But before we let you go, Q Points is definitely at the core. We are about music, Black music specifically.
Yeah.
And
Oh, go.
Motown was, you hit the nail on the head earlier when you were talking about being from the Bay Area and listening to Too Short. So automatically I'm like, and we've talked about this, J Ray and I have talked about this before. What, if any, responsibility does hip hop have in this conversation, in this space? Like, I'll be in the locker room, in the gym, or take it for, I'll be in the sauna, in the gym. I'm thinking at my big age, I'm in there because it's quiet, it's peaceful. I'm in there to reflect, and after that long swim that I had, I'm in there just in the zone. Here comes, one of my young bucks coming through, just like rapping at the top of his lungs. And okay, yes, I've become the old man in the space where I'm like, hey, turn that junk off. So, I don't want to hear that. I've become that guy. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, I want to be one, trauma informed. I want to be, I want to be understanding of what he's listening to. Every generation has the things that they need to talk about and express through music. I want that. I want that for us so badly. But at the same time, I feel like there is some responsibility that needs to be taken. And I know the industry, and I'm going to get to the point, I know the industry is about making money. It's run on blood money. It's, they're taking out insurance policies on Black rappers left and right. I know it's run on that. I know it's about a bottom line and a profit. What about the responsibility on the artists to send out those messages, to put out those better vibrations, so that, because these things do affect our mental health when we listen to them, especially when you're rapping it out loud, you're creating this word sound power, this vibration that this bubble that you're living in. And I feel like if you're rapping and speaking hopelessness around you and about you, you're going to start feeling that as well. And yeah, I guess that's my roundabout way of asking, what is the responsibility of hip hop in this space that we're talking about and that Reclamation Point is trying to create on their podcast?
I personally, me being, embedded in the hip hop culture for so many years on both sides, I think the hip hop um, is getting a bad. I think hip hop gets a bad rap and unfair blame for a lot of different trends. Why? Because there's so many different kinds of artists, hip hop artists out there, right? For every Young Thug, and there's a Dead Prez. You know what I mean? For every Too Short growing up, there was Ascari X and Lynch Mob and Paris and all of these people. We went through an age in hip hop to where, like, it wasn't about the miseducation; it was about education. I learned a lot of different things. I learned about, like, FOI and knowledge of self from hip hop, right? But at the same time that was out, there was still, like, the Shorts and the NWAs and everything. So it's all about, like, what I end up, like, seeking. So we have to have we have to send, like, to weed out or seek certain things, because we look at the kids, right, and we say they rapping this and they rapping that. They're rapping stuff that us as adults, the only reason we heard it is because we heard some kid and we like, what is that? And then we go look for it, right? But we're not necessarily listening to drill rap and certain in records like that. So it has no influence. It doesn't have an influence on us. But and the same token is like hip hop, used to be a mimic, like, real life. Like, it actually told the stories on what was going on. Now, sometimes, and in some way, shape, or form, some people are telling the actual stories as they go on. It's not even reporting. They just, hey, I'm about to go shoot somebody, and then actually going to do it. And that's problematic. But society, especially Black society as a whole, Like we need to take responsibility in a lot of things that we do.
We're society in particular, the way we ingest news, the way we ingest information, everything is moving so quickly. And I know that as men, we were conditioned to show up in the world in a particular way that is being undone at every moment. One, as men, we're learning, like, I just want to be happier. Like,
Right.
this ain't working. All that stuff that I learned ain't working. Like, it's not working. It ain't working, not just for me, and I'm gonna speak an I statement, not just for me, but for nobody. Like, I'm encouraged sitting and knowing that y'all are having this conversation. I'm even encouraged, even when I interact with my uncles now, watching them unpack stuff as they age, and you see the wisdom, like, ooh. It's beautiful to see. And I think that what y'all's podcast has the opportunity to do is to help brothers do that sooner. Because so often it takes it to you in your 60s to be like,
Yes.
oh, I probably should have learned that earlier. You know, I could have had a happier life. And I think your show gives folks an opportunity to learn skills that they can lead happier, more fulfilled lives as men.
Because we have to be able to redefine like masculinity, right? Only in our community, we're the only people who define like masculinity as just being this hard, tough, like hardcore bravado, and it's led us down so many different paths. There's so many brothers that are in jail or in the grave where all they had to do was like, it's okay. We'll actually have this conversation. We'll talk it out. You know, not this, what? This what we gonna do? Let's do it then.
Yep.
You know what I mean? We've all been in that position and when we pushed, you know, because that's what, like, you know, think what masculinity is. Masculinity is if somebody presents themselves like this, this is what you're supposed to do. You know what I mean? If you fall, get up. Don't worry. No, don't. Even if it's broke, you know, think about this with athletes and everything. You have athletes who can't walk today because they were pushed into this match. You got to be tough. Walk it off, right? And now today you can't even walk. Now today, you know, we have CTE because they're like, oh wait, I got hit pretty hard. I'm wobbling, but I need to still continue to play. You know what I mean? In life we're taught to. We have to still continue to play. We're not supposed to like sit down. We're not supposed to talk about it. We're not supposed to get things off our chest. We're supposed to keep going. And in that process of us keep going, all we're doing is just putting dirt.
Yep.
Dirt. And
then that's it.
Then that volcano just explodes one day, and everyone else is sitting there like, why did he just? What happened?
What happened?
You know,
Yep.
there's a lot of people who we see who just who do that, and we think that they're just like this amazing people, and they live this amazing life, and then all of a sudden we hear about, you know, them committing suicide or whatever, right? Yeah. It's because they're not releasing, and they're not able to release, especially if you're successful, because you're successful and you're making all this money. Your life is supposed to be great. You're supposed to be okay because you have all of these things, and you can't come to anybody and say, you know what, I'm not okay. Like Chris Lighty couldn't. What if he was in a position where he was able to say, hey y'all, I'm not okay. And everybody took that and it was like, really, Chris? Okay. None of us are okay. Let's find out. How can we make you be okay?
Yeah.
Instead of, what do you mean you're not okay? You manage the biggest artists and you're this and you're that. You know what I mean? If somebody came to Shakir and be like, hey brother, are you all right? You okay? And he was able to be vulnerable with people and say, you know what, I'm not. Will they still be here? You know, so we with Reclamation Point, we want to get to that point. It's okay, you know, it's okay we're not saying you have to come and call one of us if you don't know us. We're just saying like it's okay to actually have this conversation to say,
and to bring it to music,
not
we
okay.
don't. Yeah, to bring it to music, we don't understand. We love certain artists because of their vulnerability. Like when we hear Aretha Franklin, we hear some overdue bills, some relationship stress in there. When we hear Marvin Gaye, we hear him his struggles with his own sexuality is in the music. If you look deeper, you know what I'm saying, and the passion that existed with him that he could not express certain love that he wanted. You know what I'm saying? And so the artists that we love and the artists that endear are the most vulnerable. And so, if anything that we can give with Reclamation Point, we are 4 different brothers on this podcast right now. However we show up, that can be a definition of masculinity. You know what I'm saying? Like, however you show up, you're not just outside of the masculine project because you show up a certain way. But labels are dangerous. Labels are very dangerous. But one of the ways that we develop this hard exterior is that the hard exterior from our history did have its place. You know what I'm saying? But there's a reason why in slavery, when they talk about butt breaking, there's a reason why they took the strongest black man, raped and pillaged the village, and raped other black men. What was to create this confusion in us that we were less than, our masculinity had to be a certain way. So we've always struggled with notions of masculinity as black men in America because it's a skewed value system that was perpetuated upon us. And so if you look at people that have successful mental health as black men, they have thrown out tradition, they have thrown out labels, and they have gotten to a place of what I would call, and what we would say in black psychology, is identity congruence, where they can show up anywhere and there's a psychological balance within the self. And if we can help brothers reach identity congruence, that's another wish of mine.
There we go. Wow, I am excited about Reclamation Point. Listen, first of all, this is a whole show in and of itself.
Right.
We just had.
Like, we just going there, like it's fun, you know.
We've been on here for a good minute, and it has. I know y'all haven't gotten bored one moment, so that's how you know the conversation is good. And I want everybody to tune into Reclamation Point. Please tell everyone where they can find Reclamation Point and how they can keep up with you fellas and learn whenever the next episodes drop.
So you can subscribe to Reclamation Point on all platforms, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Episode 2 will be up, I think, tomorrow. And listen, so I can honestly say, I'll say this, because the first episode we finding our groove. It's the introduction. Episode 2, my brother, this guy here.
Don't tell too much. Make him want for it.
I just poured a little sweet tea ethics.
Episode 2, we dive into relationships and the mental aspects and why black relationships in our community, how mental health plays into those relationships. And so, again, on YouTube, Reclamation Point, on all the platforms, Reclamation Point Podcast. You can follow me at Moetown Lee. And Dr. Ed, he's famous. He's famous.
He is famous.
I'm pseudo famous. Now I do have some Western world values coming out because I don't feel famous unless my bank account is different. So that's the Western world. That's the Western world effect in me. Okay, I have to own that. But yes, you can reach me at Dr. Ed Garnes on, I was about to say YouTube, Dr. Ed Garnes. I do have a YouTube channel, Dr. Ed Garnes. You can reach me at Dr. Ed Garnes on Instagram, and my website is edwardgarnes.com.
Wow. Thank y'all so much.
We got to get y'all on the show.
Oh yes, I was already flying to Moetown. I was like, you know what?
when I'm in Atlanta, I can fall through the studio. Me and Sir Daniel can come through.
This conversation, we
Listen, it's only the beginning. It is only the beginning. And I am so excited for both of you. I'm excited for the Reclamation Point to see what's happening. J-Ray, listen, J-Ray is the plug in this situation because without J-Ray, listen, making this happen, I'm so glad to have met both of you today.
I've been to a DJ Sir Daniel joint in Holland, so yeah, we have mutual friends in commons. The good Reverend Mashawn Simon.
Yes.
DJ Sir Daniel production. So yeah.
Okay.
You all here, look, because I had some overdue bills and I was hollering at one of your things. So yeah, you are a healer, brother.
Absolutely. Listen, I appreciate that big time. Yes, shout out to the good Reverend Dr. Mashawn Simon, Mashawn D. Simon.
Yes.
So, J-Ray, let's wrap this up. Wrap it up.
Listen, y'all, we're gonna make sure. First and foremost, thank you to the brothers. Thank you, Moetown Lee. Thank you, Dr. Edward Garnes. Please make sure that y'all follow the Reclamation Point podcast, and also make sure that you follow Q Points so you can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere where you get podcasts, frankly. But in particular, make sure that you leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and on Podchaser. Go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube page, and just share it with your friends. If you're like, I like Q Points, I like this show, leave us a tip. Our tip link is right there in the description. If you're like, yo, I really rock with these dudes, you can become like a full-fledged member and support us every month. And you can also do that as well.
All right. Listen, J-Ray, what do I always say? In this life, you have a choice. You can either pick up the needle or you can let the record play. This has been Q Points, dropping the needle on Black music history. Peace. We'll see you next time.
Peace.